It is such a surreal story that it seems taken from a drama novel, but unfortunately it is my reality. This all revolves around my younger sister, Emma, and my parents. For years, I thought that problems within my family were normal, differences that all families have. However, what is happening now has exceeded all limits. Imagine this. You work hard for years to build something from scratch, something that fills you with pride and represents all your effort. Suddenly, your sister, who never showed any interest in what you do, appears demanding that you give her half of what you have built. As if that were not enough, your own parents take her side and begin to manipulate you emotionally, even threatening to take you out of the family inheritance. This is my case. I own a small graphic design company, something I built with effort, dedication, and many hours of work. It is my pride, my baby, and I never thought I would have to defend it from my own family. Today I want to tell you my story, not only because I need to vent, but because I believe this experience can serve as an example for anyone who is facing similar situations. Family, although important, does not always act fairly, and sometimes we must make difficult decisions to protect what we have built with so much sacrifice. So join me as I tell you how it all started, how it escalated to unthinkable levels, and what I have learned from this experience. To understand how we got to this point, let me give you a little context about my life and my relationship with my family. I am 30 years old and I own a small graphic design company. This business is not only my source of income, but also my passion. I started it at 22, fresh out of college, with a lot of effort and no financial help from anyone, not even my family. Since I was little, my parents always made it clear that I should learn to fend for myself. While I grew up under that philosophy, my younger sister, Emma, was always treated like the princess of the house. If she needed something, she got it. If she wanted something, everything possible was done to give it to her. I, on the other hand, was always taught that I should be independent. Back then, it did not bother me. In fact, I came to see that independence is praise, as recognition of my ability to solve things on my own. However, over time I realized that this independence was nothing more than an excuse to neglect me and turn all their attention to Emma. Despite this, I managed to get ahead on my own. My company was the result of years of hard work and sleepless nights. At first, I had to make sacrifices, working long hours and accepting small projects, but little by little things started to improve. This year in particular has been a great success. I closed a major contract with a large client, which represented a major breakthrough for my business. However, that success seems to have awakened something in Emma. For years, she never showed the slightest interest in my work. For her, my company was nothing more than a boring hobby that we never talked about as a family. But now that things are going well, she suddenly feels entitled to something that was never hers. Emma is 28 years old and, unlike me, she has never had to try too hard. She has always had the support of my parents for everything she needed. But what surprised me the most was how quickly my parents sided with her in this situation. Since we were children, my relationship with Emma was never particularly bad, but it was not close either. I was busy building my life while she enjoyed the attention of my parents. I never imagined that this dynamic would lead us to such an extreme situation where I would have to defend my work not only from my sister, but also from my own parents. Despite everything, I always believed that families should support each other. That is why, even when my parents did not help me in the most difficult times, I never held a grudge against them. I thought they would at least celebrate with me when I achieved something important. But this experience taught me that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can disappoint us the most. This is the basis of everything that is to come. Now, with this context, let me tell you how things got complicated in ways I never imagined. Everything seemed to be going well until a few weeks ago, when my sister Emma decided to take the first step towards what I now consider one of the most absurd situations of my life. It all started when she found out that my company was having a great year. I had signed an important contract with a large client, something that represented a significant achievement not only for me, but also for my team. It was a moment of personal pride, but also the trigger for this family storm. Instead of congratulating me, showing some genuine interest in my success, Emma appeared with a demand that I honestly thought was a joke. She wanted me to give her 50% of my company. Her argument was as absurd as it was outrageous. According to her, We are family and therefore what I have I should share with her. The most disconcerting thing about her request was her total lack of preparation or interest in my business. Emma has no experience in graphic design, marketing, or administration. She had never shown the slightest interest in my work, not even asking how things were going. However, now she felt entitled to be my partner, simply because we are family. When she first brought it up to me, I tried to take it easy. I explained to her that my company was not something that could be divided just like that. I reminded her that I had worked for years to build it, and that it was neither fair nor viable to give her something she had not helped create. But Emma did not take my refusal well. Instead of accepting my explanation, she ran to my parents with tears in her eyes, saying that I was selfish and that I did not value family. And, as expected, my parents took her side. My parents not only supported her absurd request, but they began to pressure me to give in. According to them, I was being ungrateful to the family, especially to them, who, they say, did so much to raise me. They even hinted that if I did not do what Emma asked, they would reconsider my place in the family inheritance. That threat was like a bucket of cold water. Although I did not expect to receive anything from them, hearing that they were willing to use inheritance as a tool to manipulate me was devastating. I could not believe that my own parents were willing to betray me in that way, just to please my sister. I tried to talk to them and reason with them. I explained to them that my company was not just a business, it was my life, my effort, my sacrifice. I told them that Emma had no valid reason to be a part of it, and that it was not fair to ask me for something like that. But they did not listen to me. My mother started crying, saying that I was acting selfishly, while my father accused me of not being a good son for not making a small sacrifice for my sister. At that moment, I realized that this was not going to be an easy discussion. My parents were not only on her side, but they were willing to use any emotional tactic to make me give in. And Emma, of course, was more than happy to take advantage of the situation. That's how it all started, with an irrational request backed by my parents' emotional manipulation. At that time, I did not know that this was just the beginning of a much more complicated and emotionally draining battle. If I thought things could not get any worse, I was completely wrong. After my initial refusal, Emma and my parents took the situation to a whole new level, full of manipulations, threats, and tactics that I never expected from my own family. The first big blow came a few days later, when my parents decided to visit me at my office unannounced. They did not come alone. They brought a lawyer with them, someone I knew well because he was a close friend of the family. From the moment they walked in, the atmosphere was strange, almost intimidating. They sat down in front of me, and with a cold and calculating attitude, the lawyer pulled out a folder with documents. The purpose of their visit was clear. They wanted to draw up a contract for Emma to officially become a partner in my company. According to them, this was the right thing to do and a gesture of family unity. It was a full-blown ambush, designed to pressure me and force me to give in. I tried to remain calm and asked them what made them think they had a right to my company. My mother's answer left me speechless. Because we raised you? We gave you everything you needed to get where you are today? That company would not exist without the values we instilled in you. That phrase was a low blow. Throughout my life, they had told me repeatedly that I had to fend for myself, that I should not expect help from anyone, not even from them. And now, suddenly, they were taking credit for something they never participated in. The lawyer, visibly uncomfortable, tried to smooth things over by saying it was an opportunity to strengthen family ties, and that everyone could benefit if Emma joined the business. I asked him directly if Emma knew anything about graphic design, marketing, or management. His silence was answer enough. My father, who had been silent until then, finally spoke, leaning towards me with a low but threatening voice. If you do not do this, I promise you will regret it. There are ways to force you, and we are not going to stand idly by while you treat us like strangers. That was the last straw. I stood up and asked them to leave my office. I did not yell or lose my temper, but I was so furious I could barely think straight. I made it clear to them that if they tried anything legal, I would defend myself, but I was not going to give in to their demands. When they left, I sat in my office, processing what had just happened. I could not believe that my own family, the people who were supposed to support me, were willing to sabotage me like that. That night, I spoke with a lawyer friend who specializes in commercial law. I told him everything that had happened, and his recommendation was clear. Protect my company more formally. Although it was already registered in my name, he suggested adding additional clauses that would prevent third parties, including family members, from making claims. He also advised me to start documenting everything: emails, messages, and any attempt at pressure or threats. While I was working on reinforcing the legal security of my business, things continued to escalate. Emma, in her infinite wisdom, decided to quit her job. According to her, she did it because it did not make sense to continue working if she was eventually going to have a position in my company. Of course, she did not tell me directly. I found out from my parents, who called me furiously, accusing me of ruining Emma's plans and leaving her without income. When I tried to defend myself, explaining that I never promised her anything, my mother replied with a phrase that I still cannot get out of my head. But she already took it for granted. What kind of brother disappoints her like that? That was another moment of despair. My parents were not only completely ignoring my point of view, but they were also justifying Emma's impulsive decisions as if they were my responsibility. As if that were not enough, Emma sent me a long message, more like a monologue, accusing me of being a bad brother, self-centered, and of ruining her life. According to her, she had quit her job because she trusted me, and now I was leaving her hanging. My girlfriend, who had been supporting me throughout this process, was furious. She told me something that gave me a lot to think about. You are not ruining Emma's life, but she and your parents are trying to ruin yours. I decided to take some time to think and started ignoring messages and calls from my family. However, I had a bad feeling. Something told me this would not end here. And indeed, things continued to get worse just a few weeks later. When I was trying to regain some normalcy in my life, my parents returned with a new tactic. This time, they confronted me directly with legal threats. After weeks of tension, manipulations, and threats, something still did not add up in this whole conflict. The almost desperate insistence of my parents and Emma's sudden obsession with my company did not seem to be simply motivated by the success of my business. There was something else behind it, something I could not understand. It was then that I decided to talk to one of the few relatives with whom I still had a good relationship, my cousin David. David has always been someone down to earth and, most importantly, a person who is not swayed by the obvious favoritism towards Emma. I thought that maybe he could give me a different perspective on what was happening. When I told him the whole story, he was silent for a few seconds, clearly uncomfortable. Then he looked at me and said, "There is something you should know, but it is not my place to tell you. The only thing I can tell you is to investigate your parents' finances." I did not immediately understand what he meant, but his words stuck in my head. What did my parents' finances have to do with all this? As I thought about it more, everything began to fall into place. Their desperate insistence, the fact that they brought a lawyer to my office, and Emma's attitude, which seemed too self-assured despite having no basis for her demands. I decided to confront my parents directly. I arrived at their house unannounced, determined to get answers. After the forced greetings, I got straight to the point. "How much money do you owe?" The reaction was immediate. My mother turned pale and my father tried to remain calm, but clearly they were not expecting that question. At first, they denied it, saying they did not know what I was talking about. But when I mentioned that David had told me about a failed business, they finally admitted the truth. It turns out that my parents were not only in debt, but they were on the verge of losing their house. They had invested much of their savings in a risky business with a friend, which turned out to be a complete failure. Now they had accumulated debts, unpaid interest, and practically no source of income to get by. The most devastating thing was discovering that Emma had known about this situation from the beginning. She was not only aware of my parents' debts, but she had decided to take advantage of her position as the favorite to try to solve the crisis at my expense. When I confronted them for not having told me anything from the beginning, my mother started crying, saying they were desperate and thought I would help them because I am their son. My father, however, was much more direct. "You have the money and the success. It is the least you can do for us after all we sacrificed for you." That phrase hit me hard. For years, they had instilled in me that I had to fend for myself, that I should not expect anything from anyone, not even from them. Now, suddenly, their bad decisions were my responsibility, and they expected me to sacrifice what I had built to fix their situation. I tried to explain to them once again that my company was not a money machine that could magically solve their problems. I told them that if they had asked me for help directly, instead of trying to manipulate me, maybe I would have considered doing it. But my father lost his patience and yelled at me, "The only thing we care about is that you solve this. We are not going to watch our life get destroyed because you are too proud to share what you have." That conversation was the breaking point. I left their house angrier and more disappointed than ever. Now I understood the real reason behind everything. It was not about Emma, nor about family. It all came down to money and their inability to accept the consequences of their own decisions. When I thought things could not get any worse, my sister Emma crossed a line I never imagined. What started as a family dispute soon turned into something much more sinister, an attempt to steal directly from my personal accounts. It all started one day when I received a security alert from my bank. It was a notification indicating that someone had tried to access my account from an unrecognized device. At first, I thought it might be a mistake, but when I checked the IP address of the attempt, I recognized something disturbing. It matched the area where my parents live. My first reaction was to think it must be a coincidence, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Why would a stranger try to hack my account right now, in the middle of all this family chaos? Something did not add up. I immediately called the bank to confirm the details. They explained that someone had tried to reset my account password using my email address, but they failed to complete the process because they did not have access to the security code sent to my cell phone. That confirmed my suspicions. It was not a random attempt. It was someone who knew specific details about me. The situation became even more terrifying when I decided to check my personal email. I found a recent attempt to change my password, which had also been blocked thanks to the two-step authentication I had set up. This made it clear to me that whoever was behind this knew that my email was the key to accessing everything else. What really broke me was a message I received from Emma shortly after all this. In the message, she wrote, "If you are not willing to share what you have, maybe someone has to teach you what family means." That message changed everything. Although I had no definitive proof, it was clear that Emma was behind these attempts. The coincidence between the access attempt and her message left no room for doubt. Instead of confronting her directly, I decided to proceed with caution. I called my lawyer and explained the situation to him. His recommendation was clear: file a complaint immediately, even if I did not have conclusive evidence. According to him, these types of situations can escalate quickly if preventive measures are not taken. So that is what I did. I went to the police, I took screenshots of the emails and bank alerts, and showed Emma's message as evidence of harassment. Although the message was not a direct confession, it demonstrated a clear intent to intimidate. My family's reaction was not long in coming. My mother, furious, called me yelling that I was a traitor, that you cannot treat your own blood like criminals. When I tried to explain to her that Emma had tried to hack my accounts, she flatly denied it and accused me of making excuses not to help the family. The most surreal thing was that, instead of showing concern for what was happening, my mother insisted that everything would be solved if I did the right thing and shared with my sister. That was the moment I understood that I could no longer continue to have contact with them. My girlfriend, always by my side, convinced me to temporarily block them to protect my mental health. Although I felt guilty at first, it was the best thing I could do. I also strengthened security on all my accounts, added biometric authentication, and set up alerts for any suspicious activity. At this point, it was no longer just a family dispute, it was a direct attack against my emotional and financial stability. Emma's betrayal and my parents' blind support made it clear to me that this situation was not something that would be resolved with words. As much as it hurt, I had to prioritize my safety and protect what I had built. After the attempt to access my accounts and the complaint I filed, I understood that I could no longer wait for things to resolve themselves. It was time to act, to protect myself and make it clear that I was not going to allow any more abuse, even if it came from my own family. A few days after filing the complaint, the police contacted me with shocking news. They had traced the IP address of the hacking attempt, and indeed, it matched my parents' house. This discovery, although not surprising, left me deeply saddened. It was confirmation that my own family was willing to betray me in the lowest ways to get what they wanted. With this evidence, my lawyer proceeded to file a formal lawsuit against Emma, accusing her of attempted fraud and unauthorized access to computer systems. Although the hacking attempt was unsuccessful, the evidence was sufficient to build a solid case. My parents, upon learning of the lawsuit, reacted as always, attacking me instead of taking responsibility. My mother called me in tears, begging me to drop the charges and saying that Emma did not know what she was doing and that she was desperate. My father, on the other hand, sent me a much more direct and cold message. If you go through with this, forget about us. You will no longer have a family. Those words were like a knife to the heart, but they also gave me clarity. I realized that, for them, I was not a son, a brother, or even a human being with rights of my own. They only saw me as a solution to their problems, a tool that they could use and discard at their convenience. The legal case progressed quickly. Emma tried to deny everything at first, but finally confessed under pressure. She claimed that her actions had been motivated by desperation and the desire to help the family. However, that confession did not exempt her from the consequences. The process ended with a court settlement. Emma avoided jail by pleading guilty, but she had to pay a significant fine and attend mandatory therapy sessions. My parents, on the other hand, were included in the case as accomplices, since the evidence showed that they knew what Emma was planning to do from their house. As part of the agreement, they were legally prohibited from trying to contact me or get involved in my personal or professional life. Although the outcome was favorable for me, I cannot say I was unharmed. Losing my family, even under these circumstances, is something I never thought would happen. I always imagined that, upon being successful, I could share my achievements with them, build happy memories, and help them genuinely. But this experience taught me that there is a big difference between helping and being exploited. From that moment on, I took steps to protect myself even more. I changed my phone number, reinforced the security of my company, and focused on surrounding myself with people who truly support me and value me for who I am, not for what I have. My girlfriend, my friends, and even my colleagues became my new family, people I can trust and who have helped me heal. The most ironic thing of all is that since this conflict ended, my company has grown more than ever. It is as if freeing my life from toxicity allowed me to fully focus on what really matters. Every contract I sign, every project we complete, reminds me that all this effort was worth it. I am not alone, and I am not willing to allow anyone to jeopardize what has cost me so much to build again. I want to close this chapter by sharing a reflection with you. Sometimes, the people we think will always be on our side can become our biggest obstacles. But it is also true that we can overcome any adversity if we surround ourselves with people who truly value and support us. Thank you for listening to my story and allowing me to share something so personal. I hope that if any of you are facing a similar situation, you can find the strength to protect yourself and defend what is yours. Do not forget that your effort and your peace of mind are worth more than any bond that tries to trample them.